So it's my opinion that when it comes to the normal rotation of things, as going from council member to council member as mayor, Mr. Freeman should not be passed over. However, my main opinion on the way a mayor should be selected is put best by the Morgan Hill Times in yesterday's editorial. The mayor should be put before the people, and the people should be allowed to vote for mayor. And that's the way I would like to see it. I would like to see the people vote for mayor. That way it's not upon you to pass over anybody, and let the people decide. That way if the people don't want him as mayor, he won't be mayor, and that's pretty much it. Otherwise, please don't leapfrog over. Thank you.
The next speaker is John Dossetti, followed by Bruce Titchenen in Rona College.
My name is John Dossetti. I live at 15174 Yosemite Way in Morgan Hill. You know, Bev, I've known you for a long time. Tonight you embarrass me. You embarrass the community. You know, the mayor of Morgan Hill is more than symbolic, although you only have the same vote as the rest of them. But I remember 1984, the mayor of Morgan Hill told Caltrans, don't put in the third lane. It's growth inducing. And all of you people were as happy as hell. We didn't put in the third lane. Caltrans listened. So when you're going to be a mayor, you got a lot of responsibilities, more than just being one vote. I'm all for going into the rotation. But I'm going to ask you one thing, Bev. If you want to be mayor of Morgan Hill 2 years from now, I suggest you do two things. Number one, you join Toastmasters.
John, if I had time, I would.
No, you got time.
No,
Number two, Bev, and I mean this sincerely because I took a Dale Carnegie course. Take a Dale Carnegie course that teaches how to make friends and influence people. Bev, if you want to be mayor of Morgan Hill, I'll vote for you if you change your ways. Bev brings up a lot of issues that needed to be brought up, but the way he goes about it is wrong. Mamma mia, we need something here. And tonight, yelling at the people across the way, yelling at them and everything. It's embarrassment. And you should know better than that, Bev. You've been around a long time. You raised a lot of kids. You were all that. So what's happened to you? I just don't like to see what you're yelling at these people over here. You're part of a group. You got to be on the team. You're on the team by yourself. You're standing on the sideline yelling at all the instructions. You want them to do the thing. So calm down, relax, join Toastmasters, and join and enroll in it. Don't do it, and then when it comes time, you ain't going to be mayor. Thank you.
Is Bruce Titchenen.
Madam Mayor, members of the council, my name is Bruce Titchenen. My address is 440 Claremont Drive here in Morgan Hill. For the last 22 years or so, I have occupied a role that I think is much like the role that Mr. Freeman occupies, gadfly. And I've found that in dealing in public affairs, the most difficult and important thing to do is to keep your demeanor cool and your language civil, your statement civil. And it's certainly been the biggest challenge for me. I think that in particular it's important as a matter of protecting the public interest in genuinely the integrity of government, not to let your statements slip below a certain minimum level of civility. And I think that Mr. Freeman, who is somewhat new to politics, has not yet mastered the level of self-discipline. I believe he can, to always keep this level of civility in his statements. Just to give you the example that always rings in my mind, he has been quoted in the newspaper several times as criticizing a member of city staff for his age and his height. is simply unacceptable behavior to criticize people for personal characteristics that they have no control over. It is akin, for instance, to criticizing somebody for their gender or their race, and we know that that's unacceptable. I think the role of gadfly is important. I do find myself in opposition to most of Mr. Freeman's substantive positions, but I would defend to the death his right to take them. Nevertheless, I'm here to oppose, at least until I see him getting his standard of speech up to the minimum level of civility that I'm talking about consistently, him being elevated to any higher office, such as mayor or mayor pro tem. Thank you.
The next speaker is Rona College, followed by Robert Coleman and Steve Harkness. It's Mrs. College first, and then Mr. Coleman.
Okay, Rona College, Morgan Hill. First of all, just real short statements here. As far as the comment that was made about negotiating, I agree. I think we should all be able to negotiate, but I'm willing to not negotiate with wrong. So, in that stand, I won't negotiate. As far as the comment about Don Quixote, he happens to be one of my favorites. Backwards or sideways, upwards or down, the man stood for the fact that he was willing to march into hell for a heavenly cause. I support that. As far as gender or race discrimination, I support that too. Varela has made comments about not putting down ethnic groups. Smith has made comments about the fact that women shouldn't be discriminated against. We have 3 white males up here who are definitely a minority now. I don't think any form of discrimination should be allowed. We are celebrating the signing of our Constitution. We are a republic, and to the republic for which it stands is in our very pledge. As a republic, we the voters control our government. To exclude one member of council from his rightful duties is to exclude those voters who voted for him. Some of those may have already also voted for you. They may have cast a vote for Bev and cast a vote for Kennedy at the same time. These voters chose him as their representatives, along with you. The issue is treading on very dangerous waters. Is any one of you in a position to discriminate against Freeman for his style, his action? I know you are not, for a fact. For each one of you, in some way, has compromised the integrity of your elected seat yourselves. The worst example of this is your gang approach against one. To act unfairly and unjustly to protect your own political image is compromising also. What are you afraid of? Are you so weak as individuals and as a body that you cannot endure dissension, open and honest questions? You may think you are more polished in your image, and that makes you better. Yet it can be very deceiving. As far as Freeman's demeanor, what Titchener said, I'd rather deal with a bull than a snake. Our country was born through thousands of heated debate and dissension. If our country can be born through this, surely a city council of a small city can survive.
Robert Coleman. Yes, Mr. Coleman, you're next.
Thank you, and council members and the audience. My name's Robert Coleman. I live here in Morgan Hill. I have in my hand a few hundred signatures here supporting Mr. Freeman. And I feel that this has been brought on by your inability to understand what he's attempting to do for the citizens of Morgan Hill. You seem to take it personally. The staff takes it personally because of he's observing some of the work habits of some of the people, and this is only normal. We should be concerned with what the people are doing. And if you don't have this ability, you all 4 better get off of that council because you don't know what you're doing then. I have a business. I expect the people that work for me to be accountable for what they're doing. The customers that I have expect me to be accountable. Now, I don't know about the rest of you, but this is a fact of life. And Mr. Freeman has been very aggressive in trying to correct some of the incorrect attitudes of the people working for Morgan Hill. And it's time that you woke up to the fact, and that government is changing, but evidently you don't think so, because you're ruled by the California League of Cities, according to Mr. Martucci. They're providing you with all the methods of handling these things. And I'm just a little tired because I don't vote for any of those people at the California League of Cities. I voted for Mr. Freeman, and I want him to have his opportunity to represent us as mayor. And I don't see any reason to disqualify it or change what your present ordinance says. If not, if you have to change it, then put it out for election. And I think it's time that you consider what you're doing, and why are you wasting this much time on this little, so to speak, disagreement with Mr. Freeman? And it's time that you woke up to the reality of there are other people out here that don't think exactly the same way you are, and they want some accountability from you. And I don't find any from any of you too much at any time.
Thank you, Mr. Coleman. Next is Steve Harkness, followed by Art College and Larry Luna.
Good evening again, Madam Mayor, Council, and staff. I've heard a lot tonight from Mr. Freeman's supporters about his rightful place in the election and how he has the mandate of the people. We've seen a recent letter in the paper describing Bev as having received approximately 3,000 votes. I believe that figure was closer to 1,000. If we're rounding to the nearest 1,000, I believe Dennis Kennedy had around 2,000. Mr. Freeman won his seat by a handful, I believe 15 or 16 votes. Had the people who thought they were voting for a woman voted for someone else, John Sorcy or Cynthia Cook would be sitting here tonight. This is not a mandate. This is a fluke of too many people running for office, running for a chair. Split the vote. The issue is not about Mr. Freeman's mandate. The issue is about his behavior as a council member. He has abused city employees. He has threatened city employees. He has a city employee, out of desperation, suing him at this point. He has criminal charges hanging over his head. He has disclosed confidential personnel matters on the air, on television news. This is not the behavior that responsible citizens expect from a responsible council member. I support passing Mr. Freeman over. That is why the line in that paragraph that the mayor and the mayor pro tem serve at the pleasure of the majority of the council is there, to prevent just such an abuser of power from gaining more power. Until Mr. Freeman can modify his behavior to the point where he can join the rest of us in civilized society, it would be reprehensible to put this man into a higher position of power. I urge you to pass him over.
The next speaker is Art College.
Thank you, Madam Mayor, members of the council. Two of you sitting up here are kind of touchy-feely kind of individuals. That's John, and that's Joe. If there was other people out here that chose to take the same route that some of the other people are taking, potentially maybe a couple of you could be facing the same charges that Bev is facing right now. One of you is committed assault. But I think you'd rather forget that, Joe. Or do you forget the time you slammed Steve Harkness up against a wall out here at a council meeting? Assault's okay.
What?
There were witnesses to it, Steve.
That's news to me. It's news to you, Steve.
Maybe they were kissing.
Could be.
Order, please.
Jan, your disdain for the public and their input is well documented during your tenure as mayor. And Dennis, you're a second, right behind her. All of you have been caught in lies, deceit, refusing to provide information to the public, cover-ups, and talk about acting in childish manners. You've all done it. And Joe, I think you need to go back to remember when you first came on this council and your actions sitting up here. You've violated the Brown Act numerous times. And again, you're going to violate it tonight. And I noticed that you've hired a negotiator to do the city attorney's contract this time. Of course, that wasn't a violation the last time, but you're hiring a consultant to do it this time. You talk about experience. None of you can match Bev's contributions to this community. His Boy Scout activities, his many years as a Park Recreation Commissioner, are just a few of the things that Bev has done in this community. One thing I can say about Bev, when you have his handshake or his word, he keeps it. I can't say that about the rest of you. John said it best. To be mayor, this is a quote, you have to have the respect of the entire community. Right out of the newspaper. But none of you have the entire respect of the community. Since about 65% of the people don't vote to begin with, that leaves 35%. And of that 35%, each of you got a certain percentage of the vote. So none of you meet that criteria. The criteria that you're using to measure Bev Freeman, none of you can stand up to. None of you should have served as mayor, and none of you should serve as mayor if Bev doesn't serve as mayor. You've all done discretions. And I say let the first of you who has committed no transgressions make the motion to deny your fellow council member his rightful opportunity to serve as mayor. Political differences is not a justification. Talk about the city's reputation. Bev didn't start it. The reputation of this city was bad long before Bev got here. That's the reason he was elected at the council. If you take the action I think you're going to take tonight, I don't think it's going to stand. And my feelings are, instead of having Bev stand down, if you can't stand the heat, maybe you ought to get out of the kitchen. Thank you.
The next speaker is Larry Luna, followed by Brenda Breon and Jim Rodley.
Good evening, Madam Mayor, City Council, people of Morgan Hill. It took a lot for me to come up here tonight. I'm very nervous. It's been a long time since I've spoken in front of folks. I've known Bev Freeman for a couple of years. I know him to be an honorable man. I've heard a lot of things that he's done for the community and for the children of Morgan Hill. Last year, for example, he was hurting so bad, he asked me to be Santa Claus. That one of the gentlemen on the boat, there may be some ladies on the boat, I'm not sure. It's Bev Freeman's been on that boat for many years. And I got on that boat, and let me tell you, it's not an easy job. And I'm not 70-something years old. Tonight I heard a lot of comments, and I've been in Morgan Hill since 1972. I've always been proud to live in Morgan Hill. I know several of you. Tonight I've heard several speakers making comments about you or Bev or whatever, but most of it was a mockery. Many presidents have been elected by a very small margin, and that's not a point. Mr. Freeman was elected. He is a council member. You've had a system here that says that you rotate the job of mayor. John is coming up next, and he should be. Then Bev is coming up next after him, and he should be. A gentleman spoke about eloquence. I don't have a lot of eloquence, and some of you don't either. And some of you do have a lot. That's not a bearing either. I think a lot of our forefathers didn't have a lot of eloquence. Just because you don't have the smoothness that other people have doesn't mean you're not an honorable person. It doesn't mean that you cannot do a good job. I'm one of those people that's hooked on Channel 34. I watch the council meetings a lot. Not all the time, but I watch them when I can. And I do find many times inappropriate behavior in a lot of the members. Not to say that I wouldn't be inappropriate either if I were up there. It's a hard job. It's late tonight, and I bet you're tired, just like I am. My point is, I believe that Bev Freeman is an honorable man. I believe the people of Morgan Hill elected him to do a job. If the job that Bev is supposed to be doing cannot be done by him, I think it should be brought to the vote of the people of Morgan Hill. If you believe that the rotation system isn't working, then you need to put it to the people of Morgan Hill, not the people that are in here tonight. We're only a little piece of Morgan Hill. There are many, many people in this town who don't come to the meetings, who do care about what's happening here, who elected you to be here to represent us. And I ask you to continue the system you have and continue with Mr. Freeman going up after John. And if you can't do that, I ask you to bring it to the people of Morgan Hill. Thank you very much.
With Brenda Freon.
Hi, Mayor and council members. I did not come here tonight to originally speak. I just came for moral support. I have come to 2 council meetings, and after the last one, I vowed I would never come again because of actions. I witnessed an obscene gesture by Mr. Freeman to a member of the audience. I found that disturbing that an elected official that is supposed to represent the city would do that. I am nervous. I've heard about what you've done in the past. I've only been in Morgan Hill 2 years, and as part of my negligence and not reading on who council members that are running are, I voted for you, and I was one of those people who, when I first saw you, was surprised that you weren't a woman. I will not do that again. I will do a little research. The way you act, your temper tantrums, you're throwing papers tonight, and people that support you, I can't believe they would do that. I can't believe they would support you. People that think Morgan Hill is so bad. I came from near Buffalo, New York, and I moved out here because I didn't want to shovel snow anymore, and the Bills kept losing the Super Bowl. And I love this town. I dedicate a lot of hours of work a week as volunteer in different organizations. And I've heard about what you've done in the past. The past is gone. The present and the future is what needs to be handled. And you don't represent that, Mr. Freeman. And I'm sorry, and I hope you skip over him.
Thank you. Jim Rowley, followed by Sharon Parks and Ross Harkness.
Mayor Smith, members of the council, my name is Jim Riley. I live 18765 Glen Eyre Drive. Good evening. Before I get into my very, very brief remarks, I'd like to thank each and every one of the 5 of you for your time and effort on the council on behalf of the citizens of Morgan Hill. I know how many hundreds of hours you spend reading your packets, and I thank each and every one of you. If the council finds it necessary to pass over Viv Freeman for mayor, it does not have to go onto a ballot. You have that ability to do that under the ordinance that is present. I'm not in favor of adding anything more onto the ballot, as the ballot has been cluttered for years and years and years. If you want to make some kind of a change via the ballot, I'm going to recommend something that I don't believe anybody else here has tonight. Morgan Hill has been a general law city since its inception, for many, many years. That's when we had 2,500 people, 1,500 people. We're upwards of 30,000 people now. And for 5 members of a council to try to govern 30,000 people is a chore at best. You serve on other committees, county level and other levels, and it's a load to begin with. I'm going to recommend, if you do anything at all, that the council consider going to a charter city and having 7 members of the council. Lighten the load a little bit, share the wealth, and asking you to consider, if you want to make any change whatsoever, to consider going to a charter city. Look into it If you want to go onto a ballot with anything, go on the ballot with that. Ask the citizens if they would like to go to a charter city like Gilroy, have 7 on the council, and have an easier time of it rather than always have a 4-1 vote or a 3-2 vote. At least maybe we can get some 5-2s or some 6-1s or maybe even some 7-0s. Thank you very much for your time.
Next speaker is Sharon Parks.
Hello, I'm Sharon Parks, and I want to say hello to the council members, the mayor, and the staff and the audience. I've lived in Morgan Hill for 19 years. I've watched the city change and grow. I've also watched city council members come and go. The office of mayor has traditionally been filled by a city council member who steps into that position for a short period of time. I feel that this tradition should continue, and Bev Freeman should not be passed over. It is important to remember the people of Morgan Hill voted for him, knowing that he might eventually serve as mayor. And knowing this, Bev should be allowed to serve after all. If you can't trust Santa Claus, who can you trust? Thank you.
Our last speaker card is Ross Harkness.
Ms. Mayor, council members, we've heard a lot about politics as this decision is being made, and I think it's not about politics so much as about tactics. I would defend Mr. Freeman's right to have an opposite opinion of anybody else's. That's what this democracy is founded on. However, to support that opposite opinion, he is using tactics that are reprehensible. He is harassing city employees. He is intimidating citizens in their own council chambers. This is not an easy action for you to handle. This is an unfortunate action. It's something that really shouldn't happen, but has to happen. Many of the voters maybe voted for him knowing he was going to be mayor, but they didn't vote for him knowing the full package of what they were going to get. All the extra unpleasantness that has happened over these past few months was probably never apparent to them when they cast their ballot. I've heard the term watchdog used quite a bit. And watchdogs are very good. Watchdogs are important. But when a watchdog contracts rabies, the watchdog has to be put to sleep. It is time to pass over Mr. Freeman. He is not fit to be mayor or mayor pro tem. And I thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Harkness. Does anyone else wish to address the council on this item? Mr. Kirlock.
My name is Niall Kirlock. I've listened to the sour grapes from the Harknesses. Steve ran for mayor, or city council, was beaten badly. He talks about behavior. I wasn't here that night, but I heard a lot about it, where he stood up here and yelled and used the F word over and over and over, went back in the back of the chambers, used it over and over and over. The chief of police was here. I don't know why he wasn't arrested for disorderly conduct and disturbing the peace. Oh, I do know why. Because of the collusion in this room. I circulated one of these petitions for Freeman. I asked 30 people, all 30 people signed it. No one turned me down. I've circulated a lot of petitions in my time, but I haven't seen as many angry people as I have with this one. They're very angry at you people. And I'll tell you, in your behavior, the way you're treating Freeman, you're disgracing yourselves. I mean, trying to bring him down, you're bringing yourselves down. And as far as his behavior, some of you are too young to even remember Harry Truman, but he had a daughter, Margaret, that sang and played the piano. She didn't sing very well. And I think it was Drew Pearson, famous columnist, that said that. Harry Truman kicked him in the groin for that. Not articulate and slick like you people. But everybody I didn't used to like Truman, but I respect him now. He stood up for what he believed in. But you people, you think you are really arrogant. Personally, I like almost every one of you on a personal basis. But I think you are arrogant. With the exception of this lady, and I hope she gets her new job. But that's all I have to say. I think you are really arrogant. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Quick.
Hey, old John Quick comes out of there. How you doing, John? Long time no see.
Well, I didn't want to be the only person here not speaking. I think the only thing more painful than not speaking is having to follow Bruce Teichman up here and agree with him. That's tough on me. It was said earlier that a democracy needs all of its people, but it doesn't need all of its people as leaders. I agree that we need all our people out there. We need all the various positions and the various opinions to be out there, but we don't need all those people in leadership positions, especially when their tendency is towards destruction. Is Bev Freeman a truth seeker or a muckraker? I tend to think the latter. Is he a loose cannon or a Trojan horse? Bev, I think you're a Trojan horse. I can't speak to your intent. I don't know you well enough to do that. But I speak to the effect that I perceive that your presence has had. And I feel that the Trojan horse is the most appropriate analogy. You came in saying you wanted to end lawsuits, and you filed lawsuits. And you consort with attorneys who are essentially, in my regard, enemies of the city and the people, who are trying to dip their little hands into the public coffer for $5 million. I don't see that as being true to what you presented yourself as being when you came here, and I see that as being very destructive to the city and to me as a part of the city. I have problems with the idea of you ascending to Mayor Pro Tem, which puts you in charge of the RDA, which you have said openly you would like to see destroyed. It doesn't seem to fit. RDA is a part of the city. I don't want a person who not only disagrees with it, but would destroy it in charge of it. Bev may have been a Boy Scout leader for many, many years, and I commend all the things that he has done for the city. He's done a lot of things for the community and for individuals, but as was previously said, that's past, and we're dealing with what's happening now. And the good things that he's done in the past shouldn't be used to balance out current mistakes or ethical flaws. I think that Bev has done damage to the city and its credibility at a time when it was just beginning to rebuild, and I would be very sad to see him put in a position of leadership in the city.
Thank you, Mr. Quick.
I'm a short person, we have to lower it. My name is Kathy Cadet, and I live here in Morgan Hill. My grandmother lived in Morgan Hill. My parents live in Morgan Hill. I live here, and guess what? I'm raising my family here. I graduated from Live Oak in 1971. I'm not exactly sure how long I've known Mr. Freeman, but it's been a long time, because I've been here for an awful long time. I'm 42 years old now, and I'll admit that. Now, one thing I do is I do teach school. I'm a school teacher on the east side of San Jose. And one thing that I teach children on a daily basis is that you have to take your turn, okay? You have to take your turn. You stand in line, you take your turn. This is another example of that. You guys know that. You learned that in kindergarten. You know? It's one of those things. Now, also, another thing that I do know is that Mr. Freeman, I can look at him today, and he's the same man I knew when I was growing up. He doesn't have a suit on. He doesn't have a tie on, you know, and that's okay. He's different than a lot of other people. He's a divergent thinker. Think way back in the times of history. You know that, Copernicus and Galileo, they thought that the earth revolved around the sun, and they were prosecuted for that. Okay, Mr. Freeman is a divergent thinker too. He believes things a little bit differently, or he sees things differently than other people. But a difference isn't wrong, or viewing things differently is not wrong. Okay, it takes a lot of different people to make things happen, and it takes different point of views to make things happen. Now, I'd like to encourage you to allow Mr. Freeman to take his turn serving as Mayor Pro Tem and also serving as mayor. The people in Morgan Hill elected him. I voted for him. I knew when I voted for him that he would serve as mayor. Okay? He has my confidence. I've heard a lot about this assault charge hanging over him. Gee, you know, I thought that people were not guilty, until they were proven that they were guilty. They're innocent. Until the court says that he's guilty, he's not. So why are you judging him? That's not your job. That's the court's job. Thank you.
Is there anyone else who wishes to address the council on this? Okay, we're going to close the public comments on this. Before we go in the discussion, I was somewhat distressed by the attack on Councilmember Martucci, the verbal attack that he had shoved Mr. Harkness into the wall. And for those who did not hear it, Mr. Harkness denied that that had ever happened, and I think that's really important to have that clarified, that there was no attack, there was no victim, there was no perpetrator. And with that, I'd like to go on now with council discussion.
Who's going to go? I'll start. There seems to be a little bit of reluctance to be the first one to speak here. I have several comments I'd like to make, and I'm not necessarily going to offer a solution. I appreciate all of your comments, and it is true that the council represents all of you, whether we agree or disagree. And I take that seriously. I was corrected at a public meeting one time when I made a comment that there's always that 1% out there that does something or other. And I was very loudly reminded that I also represent that 1%. And that is true. Mr. Freeman has done a lot of good. I've talked to many people that have experienced him in the Boy Scouts or Cub Scouts, as Santa Claus, as the good ship of Christmas, and a member of the chamber, and as the president, I guess the president of the chamber, right? Those things are things that can't be taken away from Mr. Freeman, and he needs to have his credit for having dedicated so much of his time to community service, public service. However, I'd like to go back to what's the basic problem that we're dealing with. There are some things that I agree with Mr. Freeman. There are other things I disagree with. That's not the issue. It's not political differences. It's not any action that he's taken with respect to a particular item he wants to bring on the agenda or whatever. What I have a problem with is the manner in which he has acted. It's the behavior, it's the conduct. And to recall the reason why he was censured, there were And I was the one who made that motion to censure Mr. Freeman, despite the fact that I know that it's a very unpleasant thing to do. It's very unpleasant for me to do. I wish that I did not have to do that. But on the other hand, we cannot condone someone who deliberately harasses public people, public employees, takes the law in his own hands. That is not his right. There's too much danger and innocent people being hurt. And that has in fact happened. Innocent individuals have been hurt as a result of his actions. His intentions may have been noble, but the means that he used were not right. So that was one issue. The second was exposing the city to loss of millions of dollars for litigation expenses by revealing attorney-client privileged information that, if given to the other attorneys, could really seriously hurt this city. He made the judgment that he was not bound by the advice of our city attorney. His actions were based on the attorney representing Mr. Berger, who was suing the city. That is also wrong. That action is indefensible. It's wrong, and I cannot trust someone who would take an action of that nature. In addition, the pressure that he put on Mr. Biggs, an individual who has done his best to help this city through a very difficult period of time, who I know to be a good person with noble goals and objectives, who has also volunteered his time in public service in the Boy Scouts as well, trying to make this community a good place to live. He has been subject to relentless attack and criticism by Mr. Freeman. That is not a person that can be put in a position of responsibility. As Mr. Quick said, there may be room for an individual of a divergent view on the council, but not in a position of leadership, not in a position of responsibility, not in a position that could continue to damage this city. So, for that reason, I would like to make a motion. And the motion is the recommended action, and that's the first motion would be to select Councilmember John Freeman as mayor.
Get your name, Dennis.
John Varela as mayor. The motion is to appoint Councilmember John Varela as mayor.
Do we have a second?
I'll second that.
And is there any more discussion on this item? If not, I'd like to just, I'm not going to say very much about it. I think, Dennis, you spoke very, very eloquently on this matter. I don't think this is not a political thing. I don't have any problem with dissent or people having different opinions, but it's been pointed out by many people who spoke, it's how it's done. And I see with Councilmember Freeman as a person who cannot handle power and does tend to bully and has tyrannized the staff of this city, which is it's a very terrible thing which has happened, and innocent people have been hurt. At the time we censured Councilmember Freeman, I was somewhat reluctant because I didn't approve of his behavior, but he had just begun. And since then, so much has happened, and so much more egregious behavior has occurred, that censure is certainly in line and could have been done again. I mean, and I think one of the most egregious things was giving the obscene gesture from the dais at a citizen. There is no excuse for that ever, to have that level of no self-control. everything that Dennis has said is true. It's about the releasing of confidential information, the conflict of interest, and the racial remarks of the past. I just cannot condone having Councilmember Freeman become the mayor pro tem or mayor of the city, and I will not support it, and I would support this motion.
Statement to make. I spent 2 or 3 hours this afternoon writing down what I've done in 70 years, and I hesitated to speak on it tonight. The mayor just told you I couldn't handle power. Let me tell you what I've done in my 70 years. I'm 4th generation Californian. My great-grandfather came here in 1851. I was born in San Jose, and I've been in Morgan Hill coming 45 years. I've been in Boy Scouts. I just signed up for my 46th year. I was the first recipient of the Silver Beaver in South Santa Clara County, which is the highest award that can be bestowed upon a volunteer. I was first recipient. There's just a handful of people down here that have it. I was the first recipient of the Scouters Award. I hold the Scouters Key, the Commissioner's Key, and the Covers Key. I have been Cub Master, I've been Scout Master. I led your children as District Commissioner for 6 years. I've been Roundtable Commissioner. I've held every job in Scouting there is. I used to call myself chaplain of Boy Scouting for South Santa Clara County. I've taken your boys camping up into these hills many, many years. That's power. I was Rainbow Dad for Rainbow Girls. I chaired the Rainbow Board for 2 out of 3 years back in the mid-70s. And I was Rainbow Dad twice. I was DeMolay Dad, and I was on the DeMolay Board for 3 years. I spent from 1965 to 1983, 17 years and 8 months on your Parks and Recreation when we had one. And that was many meetings and all volunteer. And I chaired that 4 times, and that's power. Chamber of Commerce, I spent 3 years on the board, and I was president the 2nd year I was there. That's power. Mushroom Mardi Gras, I used to take a week's vacation to work on the Mushroom Mardi Gras. Lorraine Walk, John Dorsetti, they can tell you. We used to go out, put the tents up, working our fool heads off. The trailer out here, we spent weeks out there getting that trailer ready when the Chamber of Commerce was there. I've worked many times, and I was president. That's power. I was on the selection committee for the Mushroom Mardi Gras at the scholarships at Live Oak. I sat in on many, through the years, interviewing the kids and presenting them with scholarship monies. Many thousands of dollars. That's power. The other day we came in here for a meeting, and they had a blood bank set up in here. When I was wounded twice in World War II, I had blood, and I swore in France and in Germany, both times I was wounded, that when I got home I would give blood. I gave 8 gallons of blood, and I gave 2 pints into the 9-gallon.
Too much.
She's leaving.
Go ahead, Joe. And I gave 8 gallons of blood. That's power. And I was advised by my doctor not to give it anymore. I've been married to the same lady for 49 years. We'll hit our 50th anniversary the 31st of March next year. That's power. We raised 5 children. We have 12 grandkids. That's power. I'm in the Blue Lodge, the Masonic Lodge up here. I'm in the Scottish Rite. Every Christmas I go up for the Delexious children to be their Santa Claus. That's one of the rare ones I'm doing now because of my arthritis. I can't do the long ones like I did on the ship. John Espinoza and I put this magic ship together 14, 15, 16 years ago, and I spent many, hundreds of hours as your Santa Claus on the magic ship. This is an old paper, 1981. That's power. Back it down and show it to them. I am in the shrine, and I'm in the clowns on the shrine. And I'm happy to say I've just been cleared to go to the Shriners Hospital. I can go in as a clown now, and it's tough to get in there, to go around and see the children. And I do it once a month, and I'm very proud of that. That's power. on the 4th of July, I've worked many years on the 4th of July. When I was in the chamber and far before it. I used to shoot the fireworks. I lit the match to shoot the fireworks. And I'd go out and
Jan, you stop rolling your eyes.
You're out of order. Go ahead, Bev.
And I spent many times with Jimmy Freeze and his families setting that up and shooting the fireworks every 4th of July. That's power. I worked many years on the Miss Morgan Hill pageant, setting the stages up, put it on it. And I'm very proud to say that my daughter, my oldest daughter, was Miss Morgan Hill of 1966 and also in 1967. I belong to the San Benito Shrine Club. The San Benito Shrine Club is comprised of the Morgan Hill Shriners, the Hollister Shriners, and the Gilroy Shriners. I will be president next year. That's power. In 1982, I was Citizen of the Year. And you don't get that in your rations. Link. And I am proud to say I have been a member, and I served on the board of directors of Caudigan. Caudigan did a lot of good and saved you taxpayers a lot of money in this community because these people were trying to shove utility taxes down your throat. We beat them 3 times. Now that's my life, and if I'm a bad guy, so be it. But I say what I think, and I'm not going to change. Toastmasters, John, I don't have time for your Toastmasters. The good club, you keep them. And John, I'm embarrassed at you because you and I have been friends many long times, and you embarrass me. Really, you do. Thank you. He's out of order. He's out of order.
Are you still speaking, Bill?
Yes, I am. I'll tell you when I'm done. Thank you. This appeared in Wednesday, July 6, 1983, and it says, "Can you dislike this man? He says there must be someone, but he can't think who." And that's me. That's power, Jan. That's power. Thank you. I'm done speaking.
Thank you. Did John Varela, you wanted to make a statement?
Yeah, I do. Well, you know what? We have one motion on the floor. Okay. It's been seconded. Let's deal with that one motion, then we can go back to all this.
Sounds good to me.
Okay.
Let's hear the motion again.
The motion was to elect John Varela as mayor. That's the only motion. That's the only motion that's on the, and there was a second. Let's handle that motion.
No more discussion?
Yes.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? That motion carries.
Just a comment that I had. Thank you, by the way. I think. Personally, I just want to say thank you to all you people that came in tonight and to share your passion, your compassion, your views, and I respect each and every one of you that spoke tonight. I know it's difficult for some of you, and others it's relatively easy to come up and speak. Public speaking is not easy to do. I also respect Mr. Freeman.
Thank you, John.
I do. I don't approve of your style, but that's okay. You know, I too have heard a lot of things about Mr. Freeman. I've heard some very positive things. I've also heard people ask me, geez, the man has changed. Well, we all change. I know I have not led a perfect life. I have things in my past that I'm very proud of, and some things that I'm not so proud of. But that doesn't make me any lesser of a human being, and any lesser of a person that is here to represent you, all the citizens of Morgan Hill. Not the few that continually come in, but everybody, as all of us were. We are representatives of the citizens of Morgan Hill. And when I said in the statement that I said, I guess I was quoted tonight, I don't recall how I said it, but I'm sure, Rhoda, you'll get it right for me. I do believe that we have earned the respect to represent all of you. And I think that it requires discipline, it requires decorum, it requires all of us to respect each other, not necessarily to agree with each other. It's not necessary for us to agree, but I do believe respect is proper. And I think that's what you, the citizens, why you have elected us to serve you. I have no political differences with Mr. Freeman. He was elected by the citizens, as I was, as Mr. Kennedy, as Ms. Smith, and Mr. Martucci. And we're here to represent all of you.
I am not going to agree with every one of you, and you're not going to agree with me on certain issues. But why we are here is to try to do our best for you, all of you, the citizens of Morgan Hill. Sometimes you get more action when you speak and your voice is silent. I do not want to say anything negative about anyone. All I want to do is represent all the citizens of Morgan Hill as you have asked me to do by electing me. And that's all I have to say.
We need a motion for the mayor pro tem.
Need a motion.
For who, we need to select the mayor.
I nominate myself.
Do we have a second? Second. Is there a second on the council? Then that motion dies for lack of a second. Is there any other?
Yeah, I'll nominate Dennis Kennedy.
I will second that. Is there any discussion?
I have some discussion. You know, I've heard people sit here tonight and say that we don't have a right to judge Bev Freeman, and we don't have a right to make a decision against Bev Freeman and things. But Bev Freeman was quoted in an article that he wrote in the paper for judging the four of us, saying we're not worthy to serve in public office. What he was telling all the voters in Morgan Hill was he could judge us. I'm sitting up here tonight, I'm embarrassed. I'm embarrassed of the citizens of Morgan Hill and the council, the bickering back and forth, the name calling, the insults. Or the people who are for Bev Freeman came up here and insulted myself and the other three council members. And the people who are against Bev Freeman come up here and insulted him. I'm really embarrassed. We have young children at home. My children watch the program. I'm embarrassed that they watched the program. I hope my wife turned it off when they started insulting me so they didn't have to view this. We have young adults who come into this council chambers once every 2 weeks from the high school and watch this, and I'm embarrassed for them. I'm embarrassed for the reporter here who has to go back and write this up, how embarrassing this whole attack was on the council and on the citizens of Morgan Hill. This should not be this way. You know, I was elected to this position, and I didn't get elected to be insulted, to have names called at me, rocks thrown at me on a regular basis. I put in long hours. I work hard at this. I take this job very seriously, but I'm embarrassed. Okay. Tonight we had Abbott Laboratories come before us, and you know, Jan Smith put a lot of time and effort into helping bring Abbott here and was a representative of the city. And we needed that because it was very important to this community. There's going to be 900 jobs in this community and build a $23 million building and make a big investment in this community. And Jan Smith did a very good job in representing Morgan Hill. Bev Freeman embarrassed me during the time when he told them we shouldn't give them anything. I don't want to have future businesses coming here with Bev as the mayor, our mayor pro tem, saying, we don't want you. If you can't do it on your own, we don't want you. Because that's not what I want. I want this community to continue to grow. I made a lot of promises when I ran for city council. One of them was to bring jobs and new businesses to Morgan Hill. This council has accomplished that. One of them was to beef up our public safety. This council has accomplished that. Another one was to get our financial situation back in order. This council has accomplished that. We have accomplished a lot. A lot of times I was the one on a 4-1 vote before, but yet I didn't go around doing the things that have been done to this council by Mr. Freeman. I've sat next to Mr. Freeman for almost a year, and I've tried to work with Bev and talk with Bev and do various things when I felt Bev needed some help because I figured, one, he needed help, two, that what I could do, and occasionally to direct him or say, Bev, we're on this agenda item or this. I did that. I didn't vote to censure Bev when Bev was being censured because I felt that Bev was doing what he felt was good at heart. But this time, I'm going to support Dennis for Mayor Pro Tem and not Bev because I can't see Bev leading the council at this point. Thank you.
I can't support you, Dennis. I can't support any Mayor Pro Tem. Let's put it to the voters. I would like to see it get on this coming ballot, and that we let the voters decide. It's too political up here, and it's not fair. Let the voters decide who our mayor will be. And I say let's go for a 2-year shot. Every 2 years, let's change mayors.
I agree with you. I'd like to see it
That's right.
by the people.
And I think we have the power to put it on the ballot. Am I right, David? Yeah. And I'd like to make that into a motion, that we...
We already have a motion on the floor. We have to
Go for this one, then I'll make
I
mine.
think that has to be agendized.
Pardon me?
I think that has to be agendized, is that correct?
It would have to be agendized.
You can call for it.
For next one.
Okay, well then, let's agendize that for next month.
Next
Okay.
meeting.
Or next meeting.
We have a motion and a second. Is there any more discussion on this motion? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed?
No.
And that motion carries.
Jen, can we take a break?
Yes, we'll take a break.
Congratulations, Mayor.
That's fine.
Well, it's the only way you want.
Let's see if we can get through the rest of this.
Okay.
Home so we can get some sleep. I want to say goodbye to Jim.
Bye, Jim. Okay. Back here. Johnny on somewhere, Joe?
He just went to the other.
Well, I got plenty doorway. They don't truly give plenty of those ankles.
We will continue on with item number 16, which is title of city clerk.
Take it home and look at the
We have a staff report on this item.
Yes, Madam Mayor, briefly, as you'll see attached, Betty Busk, who has served as the elected city clerk since her last election, has resigned. She was appointed as the council services and records manager when Barbara Howard left the city, and then was also appointed by the council to serve as city clerk. What's being recommended this evening is for the city council to appoint Bonnie Goff, who serves as the deputy city clerk and the council services and records manager, as the city clerk. This would require that Bonnie in the future at the next election run for the elected position. Substantially all the duties associated with the position are performed by the full-time professional staff person, and as you can see from the staff report provided, Mrs. Goff has the necessary qualifications. With that, I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Are there any questions? Does anybody wish to address the council? Oh, I have Rona College. Would you like to address the council on this item?
I feel that Bonnie is to be commended in her performance in public. She's very professional and works very well with the staff as well as I've really enjoyed having you there, Bonnie. It's been really nice. And I have no problem with her being appointed, but I do feel that it should be a temporary situation until the next election, whereby the people can vote for the city clerk as well as the city treasurer. This is nothing personal for Bonnie, because like I said, I really enjoy her. She's a really breath of fresh air compared to what I've worked with before. But I really feel that it's the city clerk as well as the city treasurer as well as the council members are arms of the people. And if you start shutting down these arms of the people where they become elected, then you're limiting the people's input and the control of the people. I feel that we must have more control by the people and less control by the government.
Excuse me.
That's all right.
Bev asked for some water, we're trying to get...
That's okay. I'll wait.
Okay.
Did you stop my time? No.
We'll give you a little extra time, okay, Rhonda?
Okay, no. That's all, basically, I'm just addressing the issue in an isolated sense of the fact that I feel city clerk should be an elected position. I feel the city treasurer should be an elected position. I have no problem with her being appointed. I think she well deserves it. In fact, I would encourage her to run, and I don't think she'd have any problem winning. But I just still feel that it is an arm of the people, and she's to answer to the people and not to the city hall. That's all.
Thank you. Does anyone else wish to address the council on this item? Is there any council discussion?
I have a comment. I think Bonnie, since she's been online, has done a spectacular job in a very tough situation. And I would like to make the motion that we appoint Bonnie Goff as our city clerk.
Sorry. Go ahead, Bev. I was going to say, I second. But I'd like to make a statement too. I think the saying, Bonnie, you're a good person, and you're very accommodating, and I can't say enough good things about you.
Thank you.
I think you're a tremendous asset to City Hall.
Thank you.
Yeah. And you're, like Rhonda said, you're a breath of fresh air.
Well, Sam, but I hired you. There's a motion.
There's a motion, second. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed, and that motion carries, and congratulations.
Thanks, Bonnie. Thanks.
Next is item number 17, changes to management, professional, and confidential employee resolution.
And I'd like to poll this to be discussed amongst the council members again in the closed session item and not be acted upon tonight.
Is that agreeable to the council?
Yes. Yeah, I agree.
Okay.
Yes.
Do we need a motion? Do we have a
So
motion?
moved.
Second.
I'm sorry, I didn't hear what you said.
I want to pull the item, be brought back to closed session for council discussion before we vote on this.
That tabling it, is that what it's?
Well, you don't need to do that because it's not like a public hearing item, so just a direction to re-agendize it for closed session is sufficient.
We have a motion second to re-agendize for closed session. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed, that motion carries. And item number 18 is interim city manager contract. We have a staff report.
Yes, Human Resources Manager Leanne Kaczynski.
Good evening, Mayor and members of the City Council. The item before you this evening is a contract authorizing the mayor to execute a contract with William Zahner to serve as the interim city manager. As you know, Mr. Zahner was interviewed along with 3 other candidates referred by Public Service Skills, and the council unanimously recommended that Mr. Zahner be appointed to this position. Although you are all familiar with Mr. Zahner's background and experience, for the benefit of the community and anyone who's still watching on Channel 34, I'd like to just go over the following pieces of Mr. Zahner's background. Mr. Zahner comes to the Morgan Hill with an excellent background in public sector management. Mr. Zahner previously served as the city manager of the city of Palo Alto for 13 years and retired from that position in 1992. Prior to Palo Alto, Mr. Zahner served as the city manager for the city of Union City for over 8 years. Mr. Zahner holds a master's degree in public administration and a bachelor's degree in government and politics. The details of Mr. Zahner's contract are spelled out in the agreement that is included with your agenda item. Mr. Zahner will serve through the end of this calendar year and then will continue on a week-to-week basis in order to facilitate a transition to a new city manager once the executive search process has been completed. We are very fortunate to have somebody of Mr. Zahner's caliber and expertise as a part of Morgan Hill's team. I'm happy to answer any questions, and Mr. Zahner's been here through our whole meeting tonight, and he'd be happy to answer any questions that you have as well.
Do you have any questions?
No, I'd like to hear from him.
What's your reaction to the first
I don't know if he still wants the job.
I asked him at a break.
Didn't want to delay your proceedings any. I look forward to joining your family.
I move to approve.
Second, it's a dysfunctional family.
Motion second.
That's why the bridge is here.
Is there any discussion? All in favor? Aye. Opposed? That motion carries unanimously. Next is item number 19, which is city management recruitment contract with executive search. We have a staff.
Leanne Kaziski will provide this report.
Mayor, members of the City Council, the recommended action before you this evening is to authorize the mayor to execute a contract with the firm of Hughes, Perry & Associates to conduct the executive search process for a new city manager. You have been provided with a copy of the contract, which outlines the scope of work and the compensation for Hughes, Perry & Associates. The cost of the recruitment process shall not exceed $17,000, and that includes the reimbursable expenses, such as advertising and travel. This amount will be charged against the budget for the city manager's office, and since this was not an anticipated expenditure, the council will need to take action at the mid-year budget review to provide an additional supplemental appropriation. I'm happy to answer any questions that you have. You've had the full proposal of Hughes, Perry & Associates to review, so if there's any questions.
Are there any questions? Is there a motion?
Move to authorize the mayor to execute a contract with
Second. Motion second.
serve as interim city manager.
No, wrong.
Wrong item. Number 19.
19, pardon me. Authorize the mayor to execute a contract in the amount not to exceed $17,000 with Hughes, Perry & Associates for city manager.
Now I'm going to come over here and make sure you're on the
Is there a motion? Did we have a second on that?
Second.
Second. Is there any more discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? That
No.
Okay, that motion passes 4-1. Next is agenda item number 20, review of city manager's job description. Is there a staff report?
Madam Mayor, this item was requested to be agendized by Councilmember Freeman, so we won't be providing a staff report.
I would like a council member to join with me. There's a couple citizens out there, and we've been working on this, to re-evaluate the city manager's job description and contract. And is there anybody that would like to volunteer? Joe, would you like to? Or Dennis, or John?
Is it to go through it?
Go through the whole program.
And then come back with a recommendation?
Come back with a
to the council?
recommendation. That's correct.
I'd be more than willing to
Okay.
serve with you on that.
I make a motion then, or however you want to handle this.
I think that would be like just a ad hoc type committee when outside the city council's preview.
Yeah, that'd be...
Look, I think it was on that. Doing it now is Bob Coleman.
Is it outside the council's purview, or is it going to be within the council's purview?
Well, I think what it is for us to go out and to look at the duties and come back with a recommendation to the council.
That's right. That's about what it said.
Is that going to be...
It's an ad hoc committee.
Right, but is it going to be formal? Is the council going to designate that as a task or not?
Sure. We have to do that.
And I think the council has to do that. So I'll enter the motion to appoint Councilmember Freeman and Martucci in that committee.
Second.
We have a motion for such a committee. Is there any discussion? I'm not going to support this motion because I don't think there's any need for such an action, and that's it.
Call for the question.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? No. Item number 21, appointment of negotiator for new contract for the city attorney. Do we have a staff report?
Yes, Madam Mayor. This item before you is at the council's discretion to select a negotiator to act on your behalf. The city attorney's contract is up in November of 1995. The council in the past has used a facilitator to facilitate the evaluation of both the city attorney and the city manager. The Brown Act has changed since last time you evaluated the city attorney, and it is now recommended under the requirements of the Brown Act that you use a negotiator, either that or you could conceivably use a subcommittee of the council. However, our past experience has been that the use of a individual who's the council's representative to negotiate on their behalf and facilitate the evaluation has been beneficial. We did solicit proposals from a number of firms who specialize in local government management and executive search. There are 3 proposals before you. The council in the past has used Joseph Hinsberg, I think facilitated the last evaluation. There's a proposal from David Griffith and Associates and Kingsford and Associates. I'm sorry, the 3 firms that you have, David M. Griffith and Associates, Kingsford, and Ralph Anderson. I'm confused. So really, at this point, it's council's discretion whether you'd like to, how would you like to proceed, and if you'd like to select one of these 3 firms.
Well, David, is what you're saying, we can do it amongst ourselves. We don't need to spend $3,500 of the taxpayers' money. The city council could handle it themselves, right?
Well, the problem comes up in, you could probably do it as a subcommittee that then could meet and negotiate with the city attorney on your behalf, but you couldn't do it as a council as a whole, because that would conceivably be a violation of the Brown Act.
How many people on council should do it?
Well, you could have no more than 2 before it would be comprised of the entire body. 3 becomes a
Well, that's what I recommend, that we take 2 city council people and as a subcommittee, and that way we're not spending $3,500. I'm still talking, Dennis, thank you.
I'm just raising my hand.
I thought you had to go to the bathroom.
Next.
I think that we ought to let 2 people on the council work this out and then come back to the council with their suggestions. I don't think it's necessary to spend $3,500 for a necessitator, or whatever you call them.
Dennis, you had a statement?
Yes, I'd like to hear from Leanne, if you could kind of give us a little bit of a rundown on the 3 firms that we're looking at here. Joe Hensberg, I remember the name, but
Right,
not the face.
Joe Hensberg, I believe, is with Shannon Davis and Associates, and he was one of the people that...
It's with Ralph Anderson.
With Ralph Anderson, okay. I didn't solicit these proposals for the city attorney's evaluation and review process. I'm just familiar with these firms through the process that we went through for looking at them to do the city manager executive search. So from that perspective, I'm familiar with some of these firms in that regard. So I'm not sure what your...
How about, my question is to try and get a little bit of background on a little more information. How about Joe Hensberg was with Ralph Anderson Associates. How about...
He facilitated the attorney's evaluation last year.
time.
Yeah.
Who was this?
I remember him.
Joseph Hinsberg, the first proposal, this one.
You know,
You know,
I'm going to say something, but I'm trying to figure if you're done or not.
I'm not done. How about David Griffith?
David M. Griffith is an executive search firm that does quite a bit of public and private sector executive search. They also do a lot of other personnel management types of consulting with local government agencies as well as with private sector companies. They did submit a proposal for the city manager executive search. They have a local office in Cupertino and have several very well-qualified individuals on their staff that can facilitate evaluation processes, negotiate contracts, and a variety of other services to government agencies.
A packet from them was provided to you tonight separately. It's relatively thick.
Oh, is it? And is that first firm also, do they have a local office as well as Sacramento?
I don't believe so. I believe that they operate out of the Sacramento office. Whenever I've called them, it's been to Sacramento.
And how about Kingsford Associates?
I'm not familiar with that firm.
He's a subcontractor of Shannon Davis and Associates.
Okay. I'm not familiar with that.
I would like to make a motion that we have John and Joe do the negotiating, or come up with the committee. They did a good job with our interim city manager. And I'd like to make that into a motion, that we have John Brolla and Joe Martucci as a committee.
If I could suggest, there's two elements here. One is the negotiation, which a subcommittee could work. The second is, which you usually do prior to negotiating, is evaluation. My experience has been that the council's well served to conduct that process as a whole. So conceivably, you could select someone to facilitate the evaluation and then have a council subcommittee that might negotiate any changes.
Why can't, now I'm going to ask a question, I know we've always done something else in the past, but why can't we as a council have someone, John's going to be mayor, John facilitate the meeting, go through it, and then have, as Bev said, John and I negotiate the contract and come back to the council, instead of bringing someone from the outside. I don't know why we can't try to work that process and see if that would work. I think it might work.
And we save $3,500 with the taxpayers' money.
It's at the council's discretion.
I have no problem with that. I mean, I like to try a different one.
I don't have any problem with that myself. I think it's a good idea.
I
made that in the form of a motion.
I'm just making my point of discussion on this. I think in fairness is for the city attorney to have a really fair evaluation, we do need the facilitator. I'm just a little concerned about that the group process will not work out without a facilitator. It may not work out with a facilitator, but I just think that it's extremely important, and I would like to have a professional person doing this. We're running into problems. We had this bogus lawsuit from Mr. Freeman, and the last time that we offered Gary a contract, and I want to do this as in a professional a manner as I can, and I think that having the other person negotiate would be a much better idea.
I agree with Jan that the process works better when it's professionally done.
Well, then I don't see why we couldn't bring Mr. Zahner into, if we run into a problem, to help us with the evaluation. He's kind of impartial. He really hasn't worked with Gary yet. And if we run into a problem of being able to work through the process, I think evaluation. I think we did this tonight. I mean, he will have an opinion.
I made a motion. I have a motion.
I realize that, but we usually let all motions be discussed fully.
And I sit there and to me, I think with the negotiations, I would like to be involved with the negotiations, and also I would like to think that we as a group can work together to do Gary's evaluation. Like I said, if we have a problem, we can pull on Mr. Zahner to help us. He's here, and I think we can do it as a group. And so we already had the motion in the second, so I called for the question.
Okay.
Madam Mayor, under discussion.
What was the motion?
For us, so one is to set up a subcommittee to negotiate your contract, and for the city council to do the evaluation, just the city, without a facilitator. But Leanne, you have the packets that we can go through and evaluate, and provide us with the material so we can do it. And John would act as the person to be the facilitator. Unless it breaks down, then we would ask Mr. Zahner to come in and do it.
You write up a written evaluation on behalf of the council?
Sure, we will.
Absolutely.
Okay, and then John would be responsible for doing that?
I think we can do that.
I didn't get the second on that. Who seconded the motion?
I made the motion, and I think John seconded it.
Okay, no, Dennis had to just...
Never mind.
Okay. All in favor? Okay, we have a motion and a second, and a question has been called. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed?
No.
No. Next is item number 22, amicus request citizens against new local taxes for city of Agoura Hills. Do we have a staff report?
Yes, Madam Mayor, members of the council, this is, again, one of the many amicus requests that we receive, and we chose to present this to you tonight. It basically was that a Superior Court allowed petitions to place something on the ballot where there were some technical problems or technical violations in the petition. Both the City Attorney's Office, the League of California Cities, and our now new City Clerk recommend that the city join in the amicus program. And the reason is that the process for review of signatures on petitions needs to be very definite and very specific so that the city clerk's actions are ministerial, so that she's not subject to frequent lawsuits for having to analyze, is a signature good, is a signature not good, and that there not be second opinions by the courts.
So the entire thought is to make the process very rigid, make it very simple. The city clerk can accept it, put it on the ballot, or not accept it, not put it on the ballot, but not have this sort of wavering, in this case, someone had a medical emergency and they got something in late, and it just kind of corrupts the process. So we received a recommendation from the California cities, my office, as well as the city clerk recommends this. And I want to point out that virtually all the work on this was done by our volunteer paralegal. We tried to provide you as much information as possible, including the request, as well as a full copy of the opinion so that you'd have the ability to completely analyze this question in its entirety.
No speaker cards, there's no one in the public, I think, to speak on this.
Second.
I have a motion second. Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? That motion carried.
No.
Carried
There's
4 to 1.
gotta go with, no, Jan, it's opposed.
I heard you.
No, but you didn't say it.
I said opposed.
Didn't hear you.
supposed to
Speak up,
say no.
speak up, speak up.
I can't. At this time, I think are we going to go on with item number 23? Is that
No,
going to be
actually, Madam
postponed?
Mayor, the city treasurer wasn't able to stay this evening and requested for this item be continued, so we will agendize it for a future meeting.
Okay, and with that, we have no closed sessions?
We do. Yes, I'm afraid we do.
Oh, okay.
We have one closed session tonight.
Okay.
Conference of legal counsel on existing litigation, Legal Authorities Government Code Section 54956.9A. The title of the case is Berger v. City of Morgan Hill. Case number 68787, consolidated with 701157. Court 6th District Court of Appeals, party Richard Berger, Joanne Berg. Litigation breach of oral contract. Closed session topic will be the extension of contract with Crosby Heath Ocean Bay.
Thank you. Okay, we will adjourn to closed session then.
It's the last council meeting. Really well. I have a feeling that you're going to be bad for something on the blood. I just testify. I just have a feeling that we're going to see you again.
Yeah.
That's true.
Okay. I won't miss anything here. There's some interesting
The microphone's still on.
Even though she's losing her voice, I think it's been a tough year for Jan, and it's been a tough year for all of us. But thank you, Jan, for all the work that you've done, and good luck, John, to you.
Thank you, Dennis. Thank you, John. Oh, flip my... Okay.
Oh. Great.
Now it's official.
I get to take this
We'll
home.
play musical chairs later.
Nothing happened.
Keep trying, Bev. Okay. That was good, very good. Okay, the next matter of business is the consent calendar.
Move to approve.
I want to pull item number 2.
Then the roll call.
Okay. I beg
Do
your
item
pardon.
number 1 separate.
Thank you, Joe. Thank you, Joe. Okay, I have a motion and a second. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Motion carries. The next item is roll call ordinance, adoption of ordinance number 1232, new series.
You want to pull item number 2 now?
Well,
2 and 3, you want to handle them each separate?
yes, let's handle them separately.
Move to approve item number 2.
Second.
I have a motion to approve item number 2. All those in favor signify by saying.
That's roll call.
Okay. Well, give me a minute.
It takes time, John, to get into
Give me a minute. I'll get used to it.
Mayor Varela,
No.
Mayor Pro Tem Kennedy,
Aye.
Councilmember Freeman,
No.
Councilmember Martucci,
Aye.
Councilmember Smith.
Thank you. Motion carries.
Move to approve agenda item number 3.
Second.
I have a motion and a second on item ordinance number 1234, new series. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Again, this is another roll call.
Another roll call.
Thank you.
Mayor Varela,
Aye.
Mayor Pro Tem Kennedy,
Aye.
Councilmember Freeman,
Aye.
Councilmember Martucci,
Aye.
Councilmember Smith.
Motion carries. Thank you. And other business tonight, we move on to item number 4, award of contract to GE Wolf Construction for the construction of conduit to Mission Water View Water Main Project. Do we have a staff report?
Yes, Mr. Mayor, we have a representative from Public Works. Jim, you got this? Jim Ashcraft will make the report.
Yes, Mr. Mayor, members of City Council, as presented in your staff report, we have opened bids for the conduit water line, which will give us extended reliability in our water system. It is a project we need to provide advanced fire flows or increased fire flows in a certain portion of time and increase the reliability of our system. We did get very good bid results. We had multiple bids as presented. We have checked the credentials as a low bidder, and we are very happy with the bid results. We do recommend award of the bid tonight by City Council. We'll be happy to answer any questions council may have.
Staff have a question? Councilman Kennedy?
Yes, Jim, I just see that the low bidder was significantly below the others and below our estimate. We go back and verify that they can, in fact, do the work. They are able to do it for that price?
Yes, we did. I was concerned, like you, when I saw how low the low bidder was below sort of the pack, if you will. We did call the low bidder. He also isn't terribly happy with the amount of money left on the table, but he tells us he is very happy. He's a low bidder. He can do the job. He believes he has expertise and knowledge in the local area that some of the other contractors didn't have, and so he's convinced he can do the job for his bid.
Good, thank you.
Any other questions of staff?
For what it's worth, I've known Gary Wolf for many, many years, and he is a good contractor, and he's local, and I think he'll do a fine job for us.
I recommend the award of the contract to GE Wolf.
I'll second that.
Okay, I have a motion and a second. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Motion carries. All those dissent? No dissent. Motion carries. The number 5 is operation of Channel 34, and the recommended action is to move this to November 1st council meeting.
Move to continue that
Second.
item to November 1st City Council.
Okay, that's fine. I have a motion and a second for discussion. I do have 2 speaker cards on this. What's the will of the council?
Sure, let's hear that since they're here.
Okay, then we'll so do so. Then the first speaker I have is John T. Powers.
Congratulations, newly appointed officials. Mr. Mayor, members of the council and staff, and fellow citizens, good evening. My name is John Powers, Jr., and I go by the nickname Jack. I've lived at 605 Encino Drive, Morgan Hill, for about 17 years. I'm one of an unorganized group of local supporters of Channel 34, having served several terms as a member of our former Cable TV Commission and a number of years as the station's chief engineer. Channel 34's supporters, in addition to the volunteers on our former Cable TV Commission, include the Community Law Enforcement Foundation, which donated half of the approximately $8,000 to purchase a church TV station, of which the professional-grade camera behind me there is the crown jewel. The Rotary Club, which donated the other half. The Lions Club, which donated audio equipment. Citizens like Kathy Angulo, who donated the satellite dish and receiver here at City Hall, John Quick, who personally donated several camcorders, and others donating things like the satellite receiver at Cali and Reek, and many other items. Local businesses like Computer Outlet, Felice's TV, Morgan Hill TV, and others. The Live Oak Foundation facilitated the donation of much of the equipment in the control room here behind that funny glass. Falcon Cable and Dalio Construction and their employees who donated parts, equipment, and labor used in building the station and televising special events like the 4th of July Parade. I apologize to anyone I left out. I'm here to ask the council to help staff improve the operation of Channel 34. The city's contract with the Council on Aging for this service, which requires, among other things, that the channel be available to the city in emergencies, that the city announcements be broadcast with a specified minimum frequency, yearly reports to the City Council, written record of permission for broadcast of programs produced by others, and adherence to federal copyright law and the rules of the Federal Communications Commission. The city's contractor has failed in each of these areas and has not provided responsible management of the city's assets. In addition, it frequently fails to keep to its public schedules and is often off the air without explanation. Several months ago, I was requested by the city staff to perform an audit of the station and the city's equipment, which I did. My written report cited several problems, one of which was a failure to provide the city access to the channel in an emergency. This problem still exists today and may continue to exist in spite of recent belated attention. My report also noted the absence of the crown jewel camera that I mentioned earlier. When I asked where it was, the station manager responded, "I don't know." The camera was later found by city staff in a cardboard box underneath a bundle of cables. Since my report, as it has been put back in its original place. A friend gave me a tape last week, 6 hours of Channel 34 operation starting at 9 a.m. on September 26th. The tape shows that none of the programs listed in the schedule published in the Morgan Hill Times for that day were between 9 a.m. and 2 p.m. were shown. Since a call to Channel 34's office after 9 a.m. that morning was answered by a machine, my only conclusion is that nobody was there to show the promised programs. I'm sure that you're as disappointed as I am with what promised to be a win-win arrangement at the time.
Mr. Powers, could you summarize, please?
Yes, I urge you to require competent, stable, and responsible operation of Channel 34, and I'll end with that.
Thank you. I have another speaker card, Mr. Walter Von Tegen III. I know it's difficult when you have so much information that you would like to share, but please attempt to keep your comments within the 3-minute time frame.
Hi, Walter Von Tegen, 14875 Olive Avenue. Mr. Mayor, hi. Members of City Council and staff, first, thank you for putting this item on the agenda. Channel 34, first and foremost, must serve the community of Morgan Hill. Now, I was a person who helped write the contract between the city and the Council on Aging. I worked with David Bischoff and the city's cable television consultant, Sue Buskey. I know firsthand how important it was in contract negotiations for the city to have access to the channel immediately in case of an emergency, to be able to access the channel and electronic bulletin board from city-owned property. I can remember how often we went back and forth on how many times city announcements are to be broadcast, and of course city staff was concerned that all relevant FCC rules and regulations be followed, as well as all laws relating to broadcast copyrights. But these items, so important to the city when contracting to the COA, is now deemed incidental by the COA's representative. Yes, I suppose for someone who lives in Gilroy or San Jose, the lack of emergency access in Morgan Hill would be incidental. But what about the community that lives here? What about the people who live and work in Morgan Hill? I, for one, do not think it is incidental. Let me give you a quick scenario. It's about 8 a.m. on a weekday. Schools are starting soon, but over on the US 101 and Dunn Avenue interchange, a truck rolls over dumping toxic materials onto Dunn Avenue. Time is of the essence. Information must be given out to the community from the EOC as soon as possible, but guess what? The person at the COA Cali and Reek office has to track down someone who knows how to disconnect the equipment to take down to City Hall. And how many minutes are wasted? Well, suppose there is nobody at Cali and Reek and the city doesn't have a key. Some may say this scenario is far-fetched, but guess what? The city EOC practiced on responding to just this type of scenario in 1993, and the EOC practice I took part in. I know that staff has been frustrated with the COA in the past. They have tried to make COA answerable. They have tried to pass on every complaint they have received to the liaison for the COA. Some people would say the staff has been very trying. But I think there comes a time when the city must stop trying and start putting its foot down and hold this organization accountable. Why should the chamber or the YMCA come before you every year and give an annual report on what they're doing with the city's money if the COA doesn't? I don't remember hearing about its senior discount on being accountable. Now, I'm sure the COA has had many successful projects, but this isn't one of them. They have now, at the very least, been technically in violation of the contract with the city since July of 1994. And I say before you turn over another cent to them, let's find out where the taxpayers' money has been going. Now, staff has asked this item to be continued until the director of the COA can be here. And I ask that at least until that meeting, that you ask staff to direct the COA to keep the equipment necessary to broadcast down at City Hall. Currently, COA shows 4 hours of Gavilan College telecourses. They should be able to play those tapes easily from the control room here during the hours that City Hall is opened. And this way, the city can access the station immediately in the event of an emergency. I ask that you remember this. The safety of our community is not incidental. It has been and must always remain of paramount importance to those who choose to live in and serve this community. Thank you.
Thank you, Walter. Does anybody else wish to address the council at this point on this matter?
If I may. I'm Michael Lyle with Morgan Hill Community Television, and in contrast to the statement by Jack Powers and Walter Von Tagen, I'd like to state that we are not moving equipment back and forth at this time from the Kai Enrique studio, and that we are presently using our own modulator here. I would also like to state that we've worked with numerous equipment failures and had many problems. What you see on that television screen is not always what's on the air. Unfortunately, that TV is malfunctioning, and so I wouldn't want you to have that impression. And I'd just like to thank the council for their support, and I'm sorry I'm a little nervous.
Okay. When you have a moment, you can fill out a card so we can identify you. Thank you. Well, there is no council action. Does council wish to have discussion on this? Okay, so then we will move this to the November 1st.
Did we vote on that?
Do we need to take a motion?
I move to continue.
And I had seconded it.
I have a motion and a second. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
No dissension. Motion carries. Item 6 on the agenda tonight is the formal review of the 1995 League of California Cities Annual Conference Resolutions. Do we have a staff report on it?
Yes, Mr. Mayor. As you know, policy development is an ongoing process within the League of California Cities. And at this year's General Assembly meeting, scheduled for October 24th at the League of California Cities Annual Conference, the membership will take action on the resolutions that you have in your packet tonight. League bylaws provide that each city is entitled to a representative to vote for one vote on the matters affecting municipal or league policy. At the September 6th meeting, the City Council appointed you, Mayor Varela, as the voting delegate to the League Conference, and Mayor Pro Tem Kennedy as the alternate to represent the city at the General Assembly in the case that you would not be able to be there. It's important that you have the direction of council and their feelings on these resolutions so that you may vote appropriately. So staff recommends that council give you that direction at tonight's meeting.
Thank you. Okay. What is the will of the council?
Mr. Mayor?
Yes, Mr. Kennedy?
There are a couple of items here I wanted to address. First, item number 28. That particular, yes, yes, I think you understand the issue there.
Yes, I do.
Basically, what this resolution does, there is a preliminary recommendation to General Resolutions Committee. They're resolving that the General Assembly, that the League oppose regulations prohibiting the construction of additional at-grade crossings and further supporting the right of home rule. Many accidents occur at grade railroad crossings, and oftentimes their families. These types, we had one here in Coyote Valley not long ago, in which 5 or 6 people were killed. And I don't think that we should be supporting additional at-grade crossings with the dangers and risks that are associated with those. And so I cannot support the recommendation that the League oppose that prohibition. So I would ask that you vote not to approve that, or to approve the recommendation rather than disapprove.
Is there any other suggestions or council discussions on this particular recommendation by Mr. Kennedy? Okay, I would like to get into the discussion as to what the protocol has been in the past. I recall attending the League of California Cities meeting 2 years ago in San Francisco, which, Mr. Kennedy, you were the delegate. But I don't recall that we gave you council direction on any of these. It was pretty much you voted at your will, if I recall, and I think, Joe, you were there at that time as well.
Can I answer that? Okay, originally I was the voting delegate, but I had a family emergency and I passed it on to Dennis. But what happened was, no, at that time we did not give any real guidance to the delegate how to vote. Last year, though, we did. When
It was ABAG. I think that was the ABAG.
No, last year when we went to Long Beach, we did. I'm trying to think. You were the voting delegate last year.
Candace was here. We went through all.
Yeah, we went through each and every one and gave guidance to the delegate. So, I mean, it's at the council discretion of how we want to deal with it. I mean, I can see Dennis's thing with number 28 and his opposing it. Normally, we go with pretty much with the delegate's opinion, unless somebody voices a concern such as Dennis has.
Right. And that's pretty much what my thinking is too. I recall that Candace Anderson, when she was on the council, had some very strong opinions on various items. She voiced those, and we concurred, and it came to a consensus, the council to give that direction to the voting delegate, which would be yourself. I would favor that, continuing that same type of approach.
That's fine. Do we have any other recommendations at this time?
That's the only one that I have.
I don't have any concern.
We'll poll each of you. Jan, do you have any?
Yeah, I'm trying to decide if I can say it or not. Number 21, I endorse that, the need to regulate firearms.
That's approved as amended, so are you accepting that as, okay?
Just wanted to reiterate.
I'm sorry, John, I didn't hear what you said.
Okay, number 21,
Okay.
Councilman Freeman, the need to better regulate firearms.
Okay.
It has been recommended by the reviewing body for an approval as amended, and a copy of the resolution is attached, number 21. Okay, so okay, that's fine. Are there any others, Joe? Do you have any?
No, I feel you can use your best discretion and handle it.
Well, thank you, Joe. Mr. Freeman?
I agree.
Thank you.
I have got faith in you.
John, I have one other comment.
Okay.
On number 17, resolution relating to jury selection system. Their recommendation is to disapprove. And what the resolution states at the General Assembly, the league support legislation that will require a uniform jury selection system throughout the state of California that will reflect a commitment to the efficient and productive use of jurors' time, and will further be committed to minimizing juror time away from employment. To me, that sounds like a pretty good recommendation. So I don't know what their basis for disapproval is, and so on face value, without having any additional information as to why they're disapproving it, I would support changing that vote to from a disapproval to an approval. But leave that up to your discretion, depending, if you find out something that some reason why we should be disapproving it, where they want to refer it back to committee for additional work, perhaps that's why they want to do it. I don't know.
Okay. I so noted these recommendations.
Okay.
Any others? Okay, then we stand as, do we have to take any action on this as well? That's just information. Okay, at this point, we will take our 6 o'clock break, and I would like you to join myself in honoring outgoing Mayor Jan Smith in the reception in the lobby, and honoring Mayor Pro Tem Dennis Kennedy's appointment, and the new mayor's chair as well. So please join me, and we'll be adjourned until the 7 o'clock hour, so come and have some cake and goodies. Please join us in the lobby.
I'll be talking.